Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest edition of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, chief content producer and writer of jakestake.com, pop culture entertainment news website. Now, before we get started, if you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up, please subscribe, and please comment below. If you are listening to this on any of our audio platforms, download this episode and more episodes, and please also rate a 5-star rating. I'm very excited to welcome my next pair of guests. They're an Americana duo, and they shared the stages with ALO, Rayland Baxter, and ZZ Ward. As of this recording, they have 2,221 YouTube subscribers, 7,900 Instagram followers, and 18,000 Facebook followers. So please help me welcome Scott Gilmore and Sarah Vitort, a.k.a. Fox and Bones, to the podcast.
Woo!
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
You are so welcome, guys. So thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Happy to be here.
All right. So I would love to learn your individual origin stories of how you got interested in performing and how did that passion evolve a desire to pursue a career in the music industry.
Absolutely. I started off, I had a dream of playing a black electric guitar on stage. I had a dream of being, I had a literal dream. Like I woke up and I was like, I need a black electric guitar to play on stage. And I asked for a guitar for that holiday season. And my parents got me an acoustic guitar. And I was 12 at the time, and it wasn't the black electric guitar. It wasn't the guitar from the dream. And so that music didn't take. It didn't take. And so I played that for a little bit and then gave up on it. And it wasn't until 5 or 6 years later that I found that a black Ibanez guitar that my friend had that he had just wasn't playing at all. And he sold it to me for fairly cheap. And I started learning old Beatles songs and classic rock songs on that guitar. And it finally took. And I've been unnecessarily dedicated to it ever since. Sarah, what about you?
Yeah, I come from a very musical family, so it was almost kind of expected or implied that music would be in my life some way or another. My dad worked in radio for 30 plus years in the advertising side, but, lots of concerts, free concerts and free CDs when I was growing up. And then my mom was a professional vocalist and a choir teacher and, worked with kids teaching music in various stages. And so, I was I started singing basically when I could talk. That was, my first moment of performing was, I was a really shy kid, but in my preschool class, apparently one day I just raised my hand and I said I had something to share with the class. And I sang all of Somewhere Out There from Five Will Goes West, front to back with no accompaniment. And then I just sat back down and probably didn't talk the rest of the day. So, I was singing really early. I started playing the guitar at 7. We just it was expected we picked an instrument and went for it. And so, it's always been a huge part of my life. But I didn't start pursuing it professionally until my mid-20s because I wasn't really sure that I could write. I just had always seen it as a hobby. So switching over into it being a profession was, took a little bit of mental deprogramming to be like, oh no, I could do this. I could do this too. And also been dedicated ever since.
Awesome. So I got to go back to you, Sarah, because the thing is, I am a choir alum. 5th grade to 12th grade, I had 2 amazing instructors, the Mrs. Pamela Kelly and also the late Dale Eaton, who just recently passed away. God bless his memory. Choir was really great for me, so I'm a fellow choir kid.
Yep, I'm big, probably from 4th grade on through college, big choir person, big solo and ensemble competition person. So we're synced up.
Absolutely. Scott, were you ever in the choir?
I was never in a choir, but I've always been an acquired taste.
That's
a great one. That's a great joke. No one has told me throughout the 300 episodes. No one has told a great joke like that, Scott.
Freestyling over here.
Don't pump up his ego too much. This is dangerous territory here.
The show's just getting started.
Awesome. So I would love to know, can you please share Fox and Bones' origin story to my audience?
Sure. So it's kind of a silly one. Scott was was creeping on my photos on Facebook. We didn't know each other yet, but he knew who I was online and was kind of, checking him out. He got himself an invite to one of my solo shows back in 2016. And so I was just, playing some acoustic solo stuff. And the first moment that I met Scott, I had come back from the bathroom and left all my stuff under my chair. And he was sitting in my chair talking to my manager at the time. And so I said, excuse me, I was sitting here. And he said, oh, it's okay. I was just leaving. I only came over here to steal some stuff out of your bag. That's the first thing he ever said to me.
Really, Scott?
You gotta come,
as you can see.
You got to come with an original line. Pretty men, pretty ladies get a lot of attention. A lot of people coming up saying standard lines. You got to say something no one's heard before. Got to make an impact, and then pray.
Now that must have been a big impact for me, who I wasn't at the scene, but look, as an outside looking in, that's a pretty big impact.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously worked, so I can't even knock it. But yeah. And then from there, we had talked that night kind of about collaborating. He was in a band that I was familiar with, and I had never co-written with anyone before. And he asked if I was ever interested in doing that, and I was like, yeah, I would definitely do that and give it a try. And a couple days later, he sent me a piano part and like a verse, and over Facebook Messenger. And I sent him some lyrics back. And so our first song was half written over Facebook Messenger before we even saw each other again. And then we got together about a week later and finished the song. And that was on our first record. It was called Bones. And this was before we even had the name Fox and Bones. So the name didn't come from the song. The song didn't come from the name. It just so happened that Bones and Fox and Bones were simultaneous at that time. But the name actually came just because I was wearing this like fox ears a lot in 2016. And Scott was calling me Foxy. And then, the Bones is kind of an inside joke nickname among our friends. And I think Scott one day just in his head put together Fox and Bones, asked me what I thought of it. By this point, we probably had 3 or 4 songs, and it was clear that it was at the very least a side project to our other projects. We're like, what if we started playing, out playing shows together and putting out music together? And the reception to that was so positive that kind of became our main thing.
That's a great story. As long as he didn't ask you what did the fox say, well, I think you guys were fine.
Yeah. That thankfully that joke was a little overplayed by that point. So he knew best not to do that.
I'm glad to hear it. So guys, what have been some of the challenges that you guys face staying in the music industry, and how you guys overcome those obstacles?
I think some of the biggest challenges of the modern day music industry is staying persistent, staying dedicated to your craft, because in these times, if you stop booking gigs, it's tough to regain that momentum. And so what we have found challenging is making sure, one, we consistently love what we do, playing music, that we keep that love, and because that's what fuels the persistence and that's what fuels the hard work. And 2, we support each other throughout the process and make sure to give each other space to create and space for us both to have an equal say in the project. And then I'd say one of the third biggest challenges is staying sane while being on the road in the car for 2 to 12 hours a day, because music is a traveling business. You have to go to where people want to hear you play. You can't necessarily just stay at home and make a career out of it. And so there's so much time we spend traversing the country and traversing the continents that staying sane and finding a way to recuperate and rest and recharge our batteries, both social and professional, in the car. Once we have found that, everything else has become quite a bit easier on our end.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good answer. And it's like, the thing is, with the modern day music industry, it feels like the social media has played a big role. And it's like, yes, you can have 95 million views on TikTok or 150,000 followers on TikTok. But the thing is, I value 1,000 fans over those kind of stats, because the thing is, those 1,000 fans are going to be with you for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think, social media presents such an interesting challenge on its own, just because, you know, as an independent artist already, we're spreading ourselves pretty thin, trying to do it all, and trying to promote ourselves and market ourselves and also stay on the road. And, you know, I've kind of noticed with the rise of TikTok and like TikTok stars, that, you know, people that I know personally that have done really well on TikTok, they treat it like their full-time job, the way Scott and I treat performing like our full-time job. And so I think at one point you do kind of just have to decide, am I going to put the work into my live show and being really good live and going everywhere I possibly can? Or do I want to make content for 6 to 8 hours a day? And both are valid paths, and both, you know, if you dedicate yourself to them, will pay off over time. But to try to make content every day and then also be playing shows every day on tour or touring to the extent that we do, I'm finding it harder and harder to do both. And yet the industry kind of tells you, well, you have to do it all. And so I do think it's kind of nice. Scott and I have really put a lot of time into our live show and our, you know, banter on stage and our performance. And so it feels like the path of least resistance for us, even though we've dabbled in TikTok and Instagram to try to keep with the times. The live shows are really where we find those 1,000 fans. That's where things, you know, when we can meet people in person and they can see who we are in real life and make those real connections. It feels more real to me. And I think it feels more real to our fans.
I totally agree on that, because the thing is, I'd rather go to a live show, because some fans are like spending, I don't know how much money I paid for to see Dan and Shay, and how much money I paid. I paid a low free figures to see Dan and Shay. I'm paying a low free figures to see Orville Peck. And I'd rather see a live show than see them perform on social media.
There's something special about the live show. It brings people into the moment because you're there sharing that space, that time that can't be recreated necessarily through a video. You can always record a show and then watch it later, or you can see videos of a performance at a stadium or whatever. But there's something about breathing that same air, being in the same room, and knowing that whatever jokes or whatever songs or whatever mistakes or riffs or things that happen that night as an experience that the musician and the audience share together, and that it's so individual and unique. And I think that's what really brings it all together and makes it so hopefully healing is the idea.
I totally agree, because the thing is, I value, like, yes, I admit, like when Dan and Shay sang from the ground up and from their Save Me the Trouble, yes, I did record a 1 minute or 2 minutes, but the thing is, I cannot stand fans who spend a lot of money and record the entire show and have nothing to look for.
I agree with that, and I also find too good because I popped a phone up in a show or two and recorded some parts of it, but it always never feels or sounds the same. And it's especially odd when I hear a video of us playing, because it sounds so different than what it feels like when you're there, especially like through an iPhone or something. It's so tough to It's just so tough to recreate that moment that when you're all sitting together listening to a song being played.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so I gotta talk about Long Time Honey. It's one of my favorite records of the year. You guys make sure you go to jakestake.com to read my review of Long Time Honey. Let's talk. How can you describe the recording process to this album for me?
Yeah. This year, or this last year, we things differently than we ever have before. Just a quick background, you know, Scott and I, like we said, we came from different bands. We wrote our first album 8 years ago, and it was a concept album and really acoustic-y, really chill. We didn't have a lot of production on it. We just kind of produced it ourselves. The next 2 albums, we had a kind of a production team and an engineer, and we were always really looking for a producer that could really help us like almost create the songs, because Scott and I would write together, but we started over time writing separately as well. And we weren't really collaborating quite as much anymore. And we were having a hard time like coming together. And so we really wanted somebody who could like meld everything together, who could kind of make our sound, take what we had and also get us writing together again. And that came in the form of a wonderful producer and songwriter named Greg Holden. He's most well known for co-writing the song Home that Philip Phillips released after American Idol. But he has had a very prolific career on his own as well, and just lots of wonderful songs. And it was kind of kismet how we were connected with him, because one of our super fans in the Bay Area, during the pandemic, we were doing driveway concerts so that we could play outdoor shows for people that were like safe. And one of those ones that we did, our host and fan said, there's this guy, Greg Holden, that I've been following for a long time, and he just moved up to Portland, and maybe you could see if you could open for him on tour or something. He like just moved out of LA. And so I sent a Hail Mary email to an email, like what I assumed was his management or whatever, through his website, and just said, hey, we're from Portland as well. And if you ever need that, and normally you send an email like that, you never expect to hear back. And within a couple hours, Greg had responded, and he said, I'm not touring live anymore, but I'm producing records. And, I've just moved to Portland. I don't really know anyone here, and I'd really like to get connected to the local scene. And, we were like, great, we can be that connection. And so we met him in person, and it just clicked. And so this whole record was written pretty much in his studio with him. There's a couple songs that we brought to the studio, but for the most part, we sat down, we'd come into the studio every day with like no agenda except for just to try to write a song. And so we didn't, we would start messing around with a riff, and then maybe someone would like have a line, and then we would like base the concept of the song around that. Or Greg would say, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to write about? Let's write about that. And so this album was really like a true collaboration between all three of us, and the first true collaboration, even I think, between Scott and I since our first record. And it was just a really magical process. I think it helped us a lot mediate some of our conflict, and it helped us become better songwriters. To be a good songwriter, I think you need to be less attached to your own ideas and really understand what ideas are best for the song, and be willing to let certain things go. And it's just been, I think that this album being what it is resulted from the fact that we pushed ourselves outside the comfort zone to make something really great, instead of, like we've done in the past, kind of like writing a song, being like, all right, that's the finished project. We just need some instruments on it now. And so it was really wonderful experience. And I think the product that resulted is really a testament to the work that all three of us put in.
It's a phenomenal sound record. I love it very much. I picked, because we're short on time, I kind of picked out 5 songs that I would love to learn the stories behind them. So let's go into some of the songs, shall we?
I'd love to.
Let's talk All on Red, because it was the song I was actually listening to before we got online.
All on Red it has a little bit of a Vegas gambling theme, but the true nature of the song is about believing and betting on yourself. It's whatever career you've ended up in or artistic pursuit that you've chosen. All on Red is about putting all your chips forward on yourself and believing that with hard work and dedication that you can create the dreams that you want to create. And the song actually started with, and this riff was taken out, so we might need to put a second cut, but it started with that kind of Top Gun sounding riff in there with the drum fills on it, but on a last minute vote and decision, it was taken out. So we might need to do an acoustic or a re-edition, because I love that. I love that riff in there. But the Greg had this idea of like 80s sounding, kind of Bruce Springsteen-y type of feel to the song. And that is what fueled the creation of the song. Betting on yourself, and taking a little risk.
Awesome. I got to say that's pretty awesome. And now House by the River.
Yeah, House by the River was the first that we wrote together, and it was kind of magical that, that was our first one, because it feels like a definite cornerstone of the album. That one also started, the first day that we were in the studio with Greg, he was playing this riff, and we were talking about things, and we were trying to decide if we wanted to like use something Scott or I had already started to write or write something from scratch. And he was like, at one point, he's like, I'm just going to keep playing this riff until you guys want it in a song. He was like, I'm really focused on this riff right now. And it was that opens the House by the River song. And so finally we're like, yeah, I think Scott and I were stalling because we're like, we hadn't really co-written and collaborated in that way. And I think we were both a little nervous about it. So we're like, well, maybe we could do that. Maybe we could do that. And Greg was like, what about this riff though? And so finally we went all in on the riff, and we kind of had this melody idea in our heads. And then all of a sudden I just heard "Take Me Down to the House by the River." And once we had that line, then I think we knew what the song was about. Which for us, as we've mentioned a couple times, we've spent the last 8.5 years on the road and traveling all over, at times being homeless even, and just living on the road and staying with friends when we were in town. And we've had a dream for a long time of, in the future, having a commune where all of our friends get to live together and we can collaborate and be just be in community with each other. And for us too, just having somewhere to come home to and a respite from the road that feels like ours. And so, yeah, House by the River, when I heard Take Me Down to the House by the River, like, how can we make this about us wanting to have this safe space and maybe try by writing the song, maybe bring that a little closer to us and manifest it into our lives. So no House by the River yet, but I do think this song is like moving us in the right direction.
Absolutely. And I got to say this, I think it'd be nice to see some songwriter houses over some TikTok houses, to be quite honest.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. We got to talk about one of the most interesting tracks on here, Digital Wasteland.
Digital Wasteland is a real collaborative song that speaks about kind of our feeling of how we have to interact with social media and with the internet and with this constant upkeep and barrage of content and entertainment, and the closer and closer we seem to be drawing into our phones and our devices, the farther away from nature and the farther away from a sense of peace that we get. And so Digital Wasteland is this a little bit of a cry out of like a feeling that we're lost in technology in a way where technology is supposed to make life easier, and it feels like maybe we're starting to get we're all getting a little bit lost in this deluge of information and of different apps and different entertainment and ways to drift away from the current moment. Sarah, what do you thought? You have ads to that? Unmuted ads to that?
I'm muted. Yeah, I think that Digital Wasteland definitely was a front runner for a single. Like it was a song that kind of has this intense message, but like is packaged in this really fun, danceable package, which, there was a lot of battling in the studio of making sure that we didn't sound too preachy or too like on a high horse being like, oh, the internet's bad. Cause we all also benefit from the internet. And I think it's more at the end of the day, like going back to talking about being live in person, I think that Digital Wasteland is kind of this call to be in real life again. And especially after the pandemic, when the internet was our world, and the integration back into real life, it hasn't ever quite felt the same since. And so we're finding new ways to connect and collaborate and be in community. And so I think for me, anyway, Digital Wasteland is a callback to that, the older ways of being in community, of, being in a village and taking care of each other and, helping each other out and being there and storytelling and all of these things, and so I think that's what that song kind of meant to me.
And it's a wonderful song too. And like, we can always go out of it. The title track, Long Time Honey.
Yeah. So Long Time Honey is one of my favorite songs on the album. And, the day that we started to record that, I've been really inspired for a long time by a band called Delta Ray. And they have this very cinematic soundscape to their music that, there's like a lot of big toms and there's a lot of like really epic feeling production. And I was like, I want a song like that. I want to, have that feeling when I'm listening to one of our songs. And so it kind of started with that. We kind of started trying to build this track out. And what Long Time Honey ended up being was a song about perseverance, which I think is a lot of what the album in general is about, which is part of why we named it Long Time Honey. Because the idea is that we've been doing this for 8.5 years. There have been plenty of ups and downs and challenges. And, maybe sometimes we feel like we haven't gotten as far in our career as we've wanted to. And in other ways, we feel like we've got farther than we ever thought we could. And it's just a strange job. And it's a strange job to commit to over and over. You really have to love it. And you really have to find meaning and peace in it, no matter what it looks like and externally. And so for me, that's the song was this feeling of like recommitting to this world and to, the music that we're making together, and to each other as bandmates, and, saying like, hey, it's been a long time. It's sometimes been a hard road, but we're still on it. We're not, it's the road's one way. We're not turning around. We're not going backwards. We're going to keep on this road until, for as long as we possibly can. And it felt like a really great title for the album because of that too. Because a lot of the songs really are us exploring all of the different facets of what this career has been for us. And
amazing. Like I said, amazing. And hopefully you guys have a very long career ahead of you. Alrighty, the final song I'm going to select I selected as Constellation.
Yeah, Constellations was one that we tried many times to get a good recording of it. This is actually the third version of it that we've done. We just couldn't get it to fit for some reason. It just wasn't. We'd get into the studio and it would be kind of more of a honky tonk type of feel to it. And it just never quite came out the way that we had envisioned it, as it's a song that we wrote in Savannah, Georgia, after 2 months on the road, and we'd both been just exhausted. Our bodies and our minds were out of it. I'd been having a lot of show drinks and wandering around Savannah, Georgia when the concept came to us. And so the first 2 times we recorded it didn't take, and finally we're in the studio and we started recording it. And Greg Holden, our producer, was there with our backing band, the Quick and Easy Boys. And I see just this look of bewilderment, but also challenge on Greg's face, and he starts conducting them in different ways. So he changes it from a Rolling Stones honky tonk type feel, and he injects an 80s type of drive to it. And so it just changed the whole feel and the whole, almost the tempo and just the whole gravitas of the whole song, and conducts the band to record it in a different way than expected. And it really stuck. It finally came out in a way that we felt did the song justice, and also recreated the feelings of being drunk on the streets of Savannah, Georgia.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. So who are your dream collaborators, the singers, the songwriters, the producers, and the musicians who would help shape your sound?
Well, I guess one more time, got to shout out Greg Holden, who we're working with now. I don't know if it counts to be working with it. We're currently be working with your dream producer, but he is our dream producer as far as what he has helped us create and the songs that he's gotten out of us through our writing collaborations. I know a few other artists that I absolutely love. Butch Walker is one. Rayland Baxter, David Ramirez are artists that I really respect and would love playing some music with. And then also some of our local scene that it'd be a dream to make music with. Glitter Fox from Portland, Haley Johnson, Christopher Worth. The friends in our Portland music scene are really inspiring to us, and any music we could play with them would be a dream to me. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with all of the above. We also just went on tour with a band called Fantastic Cat, and each one of them is an incredible songwriter, and one of them is a producer. So, again, these are friends, but also, idols in a way that, having any sort of collaboration in the future would be incredible. And yeah, I think I definitely agree with the Butch Walker one. We had talked a lot about, a dream of having him produce a record. And it was pretty interesting when we told Greg Holden, that they're friends. And so Greg was able to call Butch and be like, what would you do on this song? And so it was kind of cool to see how those things kind of come to you, even if you can't afford to work with these certain producers yet. But yeah, I definitely agree with everything that Scott said as well.
Awesome. So guys, last question. Are you ready? Where can my audience find your music? And where can they find you on social media and connect with you? And also number 3, if you're playing additional tours this year, where can I find information about those tours and shows?
Absolutely. We are on all social media at Fox and Bones. That's all spelled out. And you can find all those links directly at foxandbones.com. Nice and easy. And that includes where all our tour stops will be in the upcoming months. We've got a big run coming up through Montana, Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. Capped off with, I believe we're going to be hitting the road for a few shows on the Northwest and West Coast with Fantastic Cat. And that's all leading into a full Western United States tour that'll take us through California, out through Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and back home up to Oregon and Washington. And all that information can be found at foxandbones.com /shows if you want to get specific. And then Fox and Bones on all social media.
Also, we are on all the streaming platforms. So if you search Fox and Bones on Spotify or Amazon, Apple Music, YouTube, at this point, you will find Fox and Bones. So it used to be when we first started the band, when you typed in Fox and Bones, we would get the show Bones, which was on the network Fox. Oh, yeah. And we've now finally surpassed the SEO so that if you search Fox and Bones, you will find us one way or another.
Now that's a victory, to say the least.
Yes.
Alrighty, guys. If you miss an episode of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast, visit our channels on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, Spotify, and Spreaker. It's Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar, JACOB ELYACHAR. Now, are you on social media? Because I'm on social media too. Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, and YouTube. Jacob Elyachar, JACOB ELYACHAR. And guys, read my review of Long Time Honey. You want to know what's going on with America's Got Talent, who won a Masked Singer Season 11. Visit jakes-jake.com, the blog that started all, jakes-jake.com. Guys, it was such a privilege to have both of you here. I'm so happy for all your success, and I cannot wait to hopefully see you guys one day in concert.
We would love that. So nice to meet you, Jacob.
Thanks for having us, and see you out on the road.
All right, and guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Now, until next time, have a great one, everybody. Goodbye.